Oh, I thought today we could talk a little bit about smoking devices in battery-operated toys. You got your smoking spaceman, which is probably the most well-known of the smokers. And of the China-made repros, this blue one here, originally designed by Tin Tom Toys. Let's see if this one is. This particular one was the Ha-Ha version, but they kept his smoker design. Initially, the smoker design was a clever idea in that he incorporated the bellows part with the smoking part. The biggest drawback to this design is, here's one cut away, is that, let me get the bellows part. I've sliced it in half so in order you can see how the bellows go up in there, and that's going to move air in and out past near where the heating coil is going to be, which this one still has the top part on it. And the heating coil is unfortunately up above the spout. Now in a properly designed smoker, the heating coil is going to be in line with the spout or below the spout so that the air by the bellows is forced to move across the heating coil. Having it up above was a problem. The next problem with the design is this little teeny area right here. That's the only area that was provided as an oil reservoir. The oil, of course, makes the smoke, or in some modern toys it's going to be a glycol for no smell. So it had an extremely small cavity to hold the cotton wool for the oil. In most vintage smokers, well, this is a modern one, but it does represent the vintage ones better. The entire bottom part normally would be bigger than this, but that would all be the cotton wool holding oil, which then has a small strand of the cotton wool coming up to the heating element to wick, heating element being up on top here and directly in line if you were to able to stare down through the barrel with the smoking unit. Here is a vintage one. This is a metal can one. This whole metal can becomes one form of the circuit and the other end of the heating element is there, but this whole bottom part is wick. This is where they hold the cotton wool and the oil so they could hold a large supply of oil. Here's one from a toy locomotive, battery operated bump and go. This is all stack for appearance. That's stuck up above the toy. That's why there's this chrome ring on it. So there's no smoking function happening there. All the smoking function is happening down in here. And this particular one was designed to run off 3D cells, so it would be 4.5 volts. Let's get the battery connected. So even though this particular toy was made back in the 1960s, you can see the smoker still worked quite well. I have not added any oil to it or anything. It's just a better design. Now most of these other ones are going to run on 3 volts, not 4.5, so I'm going to change my connection to my little D-cell batteries here. Also, thing of note is all of these, the heaters in all of these are drawing between 210 and 260 milliamps. So it's pretty close to a quarter of an amp. They draw a lot of power. You figure the normal motor in one of these battery toys, one of these older ones anyway, is going to draw around 200, almost the same, around 200. Sometimes if things are binding or jamming, then they'll draw a lot more, obviously, because the motor is struggling to operate. Let's take a look at this vintage one here. Let's see if we can get it and get smoking. There's no polarity on a smoker because there's no mechanical part. It's just a heating element. And don't have a wire for the other connection on it, so I'm just going to touch it to the side like so. It smokes really well. Again, this is 50s, 60s technology here. Have not refueled it at all. Still smokes well. You can take any of these newer ones. They don't smoke very well. Let's put a bellows back inside this one. Let's see if we can get it going, because it should. These are normally defective toys that don't have any runtime. And with the bellows, I don't have to get my mouth down there. There we go. So you can see the bellow design was a good idea, and it does work. It's just not enough of a reservoir for long time operation, so you can get the toy and it'll initially smoke, and then the more you play with it, it kind of stops smoking. This one is like out of the Magic Mike type toys, the Tomy, the little bump and go robots. Some of them had the record players in them, some had electronic sound effects, some of them didn't have any, and some didn't even have smokers. But initially they did, and they ran on 2 C cells, and it'd be kind of a hard life on there, because they also had a minimum of 2 flashing green or wheat bulbs in the eyes, plus the smoker, plus the motor. The smoker alone draws almost 250 milliamps. By the time you throw the motor and the lights in there, you're drawing half an amp. So those C cells aren't going to last very long in that world. Let's see if we can connect up to this. Not 100% sure I've got a good... Oh, I see some smoke starting to waft out there. I think I had a connection there for a moment, because I actually saw smoke coming. Oh, I can see the heating element glowing in there. See that orange light? That's the heating element. So if anything, I would say this one needs recharging. More smoke fluid added, because the heating element is glowing quite brightly and quite well. Now, the nice things about this design is this whole part of the chamber, that's just cotton wool storage for more oil, and they actually provide this, because normally this mounts in the robot this way. There's usually a screw on the top of the head that you stick in here so that oil can't escape. But you can take the screw out and drop oil in there, and you have to wait for it to wick all the way down through all of the cotton wool. But eventually it'll get down to the heating part. And these are generally fairly good smokers, mainly for a long period of time, mainly because there is such a large chamber area. The only time they kind of become bad smokers is if the screw's left out and the toy is left upside down. The oil can drain out and make a mess everywhere. Let's take a look at this newer version, which is pretty much a direct copy of the old vintage ones. I don't know why it wouldn't be a good smoker. And again, when I checked it with the meter a little bit earlier, it was, you can see it starting to waft a little. Not the best smoker I've ever seen, but you can see it's pouring out on its own. There we go. So not bad. This particular one, if I remember right, is from Chief Smoky, the China reproduction of the vintage smoking robot, the bump and go one that blows the smoke out the top of the head. It's not a bad design. It's pretty good. It could have had a little bit more oil reserve area, but it seems to be sufficient for this toy. And the way it's laid out, I don't know. I can't remember if it sat in the head vertically. If it did, you could always add some oil back down that way, but if it was this way and there was a pipe, you wouldn't have much luck. I simply can't remember on that one. As far as the whole gutty works go, this is a stripped down. Having a hard time. Let me lift this camera up a little. Here we go. Here's a stripped down China smoker, and we'll connect up 3 volts to it. This upper shaft, which will be clanging and janging and zipping around, is what drives the spinner up on the top of the head. You can see the smoker's here, although it does seem to be disconnected. I wonder if we can connect that up. I don't have a soldering gun warmed up, but perhaps I can clip, if I can find something to cut the plastic off the wire with, I can clip the alligator clip and get both the motor and the smoker wire perhaps. Let's try. Okay, we got some more copper there. Well, that didn't work. Alright. Let's grab a second alligator clip. And let's just double up on that puppy. If we can. Like that. Connect that right to the smoker. Take a negative lead. And so this has got the rotational ramp sequencer, and when it comes around then the leg action should stop and the arm action and the smoker bellows should be engaged. Right now the smoker should be getting power. There we go. Not wafting a lot, but you can see it is smoking. So, smoker's still good in that one. At least with these China type smoking robots, when they quit smoking because the oil reservoir is so small, you can not just lay them on the back, but tip them a little bit more head down, and then if you put your drops of light grade oil or smoke fluid, glycol, whichever you prefer to use, you kind of want it to be able to run back up into the top. You don't want it to run to the back of this, because when you stand it up, then that oil is just going to drip down to the robot and make a mess. You want it to be able to drip from here back into this is it. So if you had the robot tipped in such a way that when you put the drops of oil in here, they could get back to where the cotton wool is, so it can be absorbed and held there. Like I say, if it goes anywhere else, like just into the back of here, it's just going to run out and make a mess. So that's something to keep in mind if you're ever dealing with smoking robots and how the smokers work. It's a heating element wire. It's a Constantine wire, very small gauge. In fact, I bet, because I can't see it with my eyes, there is a wire between those two. They are held together. I don't know if we can get it to focus. See that little wire? That's the heating element in one of these. In fact, let's try putting 3 volts to it and see if we can get it to glow. I don't know if I'll be able to get closer to the camera now that I got my little batteries hooked up. And boom. Ooh. I'm going to turn off the light on the camera. I can see it with my eye. Oh, just pull the wire off the battery connection. So I don't know if it'll show up on camera or not. I get it down in the shadows a little bit. There you go. Yeah, I think you can see it. So it's glowing hot, and that's all it has to do is cause the oil to smoke. And it was oil in the earlier toys. Like say, for safety reasons, the more modern toys use a glycol mix, just like Halloween foggers and smokers, so they don't generally have a smell. But a lot of these China repros still have the nice oil smell. A lot of people hate that. For me, and I think for vintage robot collectors, we love it. I mean, it gives it that machine's smell. It gives us that smell we remember from when we were kids. It's just depends probably what age you were when you had your first smoking toy. If you had ones that didn't stink, you probably liked them better. I got another one sitting here too, don't I? Okay. Looks like the smoker is still connected on this one. Let's see if this guy works. Should be going into the smoke sequence here pretty soon. Not quite sure which way I should have. Here we go. Oh yeah. See? He's smoking enough to be seen, but nothing to write home about. So, as you can imagine, these smokers, especially back in the 1950s when they first came out, they were really hard on batteries. I mean, D-cell carbon batteries back then, they didn't last long. You've got the motor that's going to be drawing anywhere from 190 to 250 milliamps. You got the smoker that we know draws between 220 and 250 milliamps. And this particular toy had two light bulbs for eyes, not even grain of wheat. Now, thankfully, the lights only came on when the smoking happened, because there's a little switch back here that the same lever that's causing the smoker comes up and touches this contact. So the eyes weren't on all the time. But when both of those eye lights came on, that's another quarter of an amp there. That's another 250 milliamps between both bulbs being wired in parallel. So this thing would be drawing way over half an amp on their old carbon batteries. Not a long run life on the batteries for toys back then. And that might be why so many of the old vintage toys survived, because batteries were expensive in comparison back then. Hard to come by. As a kid, I never had a new set of batteries. I was lucky to get old sets of batteries. And so I think a lot of them probably didn't get run a lot. But there you have it. Just some inside smoker fun.